We are now starting our first masterclass of the day. So we have Kjetil Thorsen, who is the founding partner of Snøhetta. If you're in Oslo, you have seen the opera building, but if you're also Snøhetta began as a collaborative architectural and landscape workshop and has remained true to its transdisciplinary way of thinking since its inception. Snøhetta's work strive to enhance our sense of surrounding, identity, and relationship to the physical space that we inhabit. So, museums, products, reindeer observations, graphics, landscapes, and even dollhouses get the same care and attention to purpose. Kjetil will now share his secrets for turning complex ideas into beautiful and simple structures. So please welcome Kjetil to the stage.
Thank you. I think what we just heard before me actually said it all. You know, how do you actually take a very complex problem and turn it into a simple solution? Actually, it left me almost speechless. I don't know what to say. It was just an amazing presentation. But if you think about large-scale projects that are within the building industry, if you think about architecture as a very complex situation within society from the very beginning, you have to accept one thing at the very beginning, and that is, don't underestimate the complexity of the thing you're going to do. So let me put one example first, which was our first very big project, the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. You can imagine the situation in Egypt at the time, President Mubarak, Alexandria on its way down, no money, very difficult situation altogether. A big competition organized by the UNESCO with more than 600 participants gave us the first prize. So we were setting up to try to complete this incredibly difficult structure in a very difficult political system. As you will understand, in the end, it took us about 12 years to compile this building and actually make it happen. But at the very beginning, the problem was not so much to understand the design and how the library itself should be produced, but actually facing the criticism of using money in order to build a library in a place like Egypt. We met a lot of criticism around the world saying, why would you build an expensive library in Alexandria where there are so many illiterates? Well, our normal answer to this particular question would be, that's why we're doing it. Because if you educate illiteracy and a society like Alexandria into a higher scale, you will have a higher consciousness and you will have a different kind of society operating. And actually, during the Arabic Spring, many years later, we got a feedback from Alexandria where the inhabitants of Alexandria were actually holding hands, protecting that particular building 24/7 in order for it to maintain its openness during the Spring Revolution. Now, that's what I call architectural feedback. But, of course, as you start up doing things like this, there are so many difficult elements that you have to go through. First of them were the import restrictions that Egypt were having at the time. A lot of the materials that we wanted to use for the building were not, we couldn't really import into Egypt. There were no custom rates organized. We spent up to 4 years just to determine a custom rate for a certain material, including the aluminium surface and the plastic core of one element. We were training young stone masons on the border of Sudan for 2.5 years and set up the full stone quarry in order for them to learn how to take the stone out of that quarry and re-establish it, and not only like the industry has been doing for many years, to cut the stone slabs at 2 centimeters, but actually understanding how they split the stone, how it falls apart, and how you actually operate under 70 degrees centigrade. But the most important was to set a completely new Egyptian standard for the workers. We set out by saying, we don't want one person killed on this building site. The tradition in Egypt and in Cairo at the time was a certain size building site would have 6 or 7 deceased during the construction period. So we had to change the whole construction of the contract regime. by introducing hard hats, hard shoes, drinking water, XL1, toilets, food, into the contract for these contractors to actually be able to perform in the way that we wanted. So we were setting a new contractual standard for Egypt in order for them to build publicly the way they wanted and had to do if they were going to maintain a building industry. The other one was, of course, that once you start a project like this, you have lots of people who want to take benefit. The first thing you have to do to succeed in a country like that is to have a stubborn and very firm position when it comes to corruption. If you're not, you will kill yourself during that process. You have to be absolutely 100% firm. So that gave us the advantage of being negligent when it came to these kind of things moving into Egypt and just saying, we don't know, no. We don't know, no. Continuously throughout the process. You can imagine that a large project like this would attract a lot of people who wanted to make secondary and tertiary money on a project like this. So the formula was to keep ourselves on track, establish an office in Cairo, build the building, have a good contract at hand, and by that continuously following up the building site to make sure that the contract actually was implemented. Now, if you move back, or forwards in time rather, to a bigger or similarly complex house here in Oslo, which is the Opera House in Oslo, you will see that even in a setting in Norway, you have similar issues at hand. You think we are educated up to a level where everything should fall into place. But simply the fact of language on site, with more than 60 different languages on a building site in Norway, in itself creates enormous confusion. We have to be sure that the communication is working, otherwise also safety and personal safety is not working. So all of these things are, within the building industry, one of the main things. Now, how do we get to the concepts? The concepts are basically simple ways of extracting complexity into more simple formulas or simpler definitions. We call that simplexity, and in a way, it puts the effort of a total system, including designers, architects, builders, physiologists, sociologists, and in a way, anyone that is interested in the built environment together into a situation that we call transpositioning. Transpositioning means that you shift your profession from one place to another while you're being creative. The architect can be the artist can be the sociologist could be the engineer. And why do we do this? Because everyone's carrying a load of no in themselves. Everyone has a bad experience at a certain point in time, and they would say, I've tried this before and it didn't work. But you couldn't say that if you stepped into the role of an engineer and you didn't have that bad experience. So what happens is we release the full person and the personal intention when it comes to design and creativity in that group. And by doing that, we're creating new things that nobody at that particular point in time would have been able to see as a possible solution. Now, the opera roof, accessible to the public of Oslo, is not a typology per se in the world of operas. It did not exist before. We basically created a new sentence. You can be on the opera instead of only being in the opera. And that prepositional element is what brings us closer to architecture and under the skin of architecture. Where is my body? Where is your body? And how is the relationship between us when it comes to the place where we are? We're in the room, we're outside the building, we're on top of the building, we're under the building. So these prepositions are pushing us towards intimacies with our physical surrounding, which is totally different than what we have been able to experience before. So I think I'm getting close to my finish. Actually, I just wanted to say, if you want to learn more about this, we would love to have people giving and showing their interest in collaborating with us on certain elements into larger collaborative groups where we are actually performing transpositioning. I still have 5? Oh, really? Wow. I would love to have people come and work with us on transpositional groups. If you have ideas that should be brought into creating physical environments these days, the best way forward is to get as much input as you can, as early as you can during these stages, at the very beginning of these projects. You know, if you recycle plastic, you have to understand where to get it, you have to know which product to do. A circular economy is not described by 2 points, that's a line. It has to work really all the way, otherwise it cannot become circular. It also doesn't help to say that you are on your way to creating a circular economy, because it only works when it's a circle. And I think this is the essence of things that we're dealing with for the moment when it comes to environments, when it comes to how we deal with CO2 in the future. There is no such thing as almost CO2 negative. You're either positive or you're negative. There is nothing like almost negative. So all these things come together in a larger, very complex package for the moment, and architects and designers have to deal with these issues in the future. If we don't, we'll be overrun and our profession will be obsolete and we will have nothing to do, because what we usually do is to disturb a situation with something new by creating something new in a location which was functioning probably quite all right. So it has to contribute into society in a different way. It has to contribute towards the problem-solving issues of the things that we're dealing with. So all of these things come together in a package, and I would encourage you to defend the position of the building industry, which today is actually, the fault of the building industry is about 40% of the CO2 emissions worldwide. So you can see how huge the impact would be if we over a certain period of time could actually reduce the actual impact of CO2 in the building industry. It's huge. It's bigger than the transport industry. But it's not taken seriously because, to some extent, the building industry is still surviving in the medieval age. We don't know how translations will look when we start looking at new technologies and production lines. So thank you very much.